Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and one of the things that I love the most about video games, hands down, is the music that I've experienced when playing some of my favorite video games. And I think for many, the music that you hear when you're playing your video games, it adds so much to the experience. I think it's almost undeniable. Now, it's not to say that everyone is a musician or has the greatest musical palette, but the music in a video game really sets the tone, and it helps to create and shape the experience. It helps to add to the environment, and it just creates an overall feel that makes each and every game that you play unique. And some games have better music than others. Some games have more memorable music than others. And, some games just have downright bad music or no music at all, which is a terrible experience. And a few games come to my mind when I think about that. But I'll never forget the first time back in the mid 90s when my brother was playing Super Mario 64 for the first time. And we had grown up playing Super Mario. We played Super Mario on the NES, we played Super Mario on the Super Nintendo, and we all knew what happened once Super Mario got that star. He became invincible, and the little music would start to play. And for the third generation and the fourth generation, getting the star and listening to that music almost sounded like circus music. It didn't really sound like anything, too special. You just knew that it meant you got the star and you were invincible and it was time to go. But I remember when he was playing Mario 64, and I remember the first time he got the wing cap. And I'll never forget how that music sounded when getting the wing cap. And I'll never forget how having that music in the background while flying through Super Mario 64, you literally felt like you were on cloud nine. You felt like you were floating on air, because the music had this light, airy, symphonic. Is that a word? It just felt like very orchestral. It just had this orchestral, bright kind of sound to it. It didn't sound like the same type of clown music that you heard in, the Mario games of old. And it's just one of those things that, shaped the experience. When I heard the Infinity music, as I'm not sure how you would label that music. If you guys know what that song is called, I call it like Infinity music because it's just, you are invincible, or you have the wing cap, or in Mario 64 you had the metal cap, or I think there was one that made you invisible, or it made you permeable in some way. It's been a long time since I played Mario 64, but the two caps that stood out to me the most were the wing cap, because obviously you needed it to fly to get to certain levels, and then the metal cap because you needed it to be able to walk underwater, to beat certain levels. But there was just something about that was game changing, and it kind of signified to me how much more seriously music was being considered when playing a lot of these games. Now, it's not to say that music wasn't important back in the 90s or back during the fourth generation. I mean, another one of my favorite games of all time, Rocket Knight Adventures, has one of the most memorable soundtracks that I've ever heard. Kind of like this fusion of jazz and, like this kind of sonic, electric sounding music. Now, for lack of better terms, a lot of the music that came on the Sega Genesis did have this electric kind of sound. I don't know if it had to do with the sound chip in the Sega Genesis, but most Sega Genesis games had a very distinct type of sound to it. But I remember Rocket Knight Adventure, that opening level, that sharp, almost like this electric trumpet type of sound, just made you feel very courageous. It made you feel like you were getting ready to embark on this amazing 2D side-scrolling adventure. And each level had this very unique, punchy type of sound to it that kind of renewed your energy. The music in a video game can really renew your energy and create a whole new level of excitement. And I think that's really important because some games tend to drag on, especially if you consider like an RPG where there's a lot of grinding involved and there's a lot of, battle after battle after battle. If the music isn't engaging, and if the music doesn't really captivate you and make you want to continue going on, it can be a real downer. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why a game like Chrono Trigger, which I don't have sitting here, but Chrono Trigger as well has some of the most memorable music that that I've ever heard. But I think that's a big part of the reason why Chrono Trigger is so memorable, because the music at every step in that game, from the opening scene to all of the dungeons that you go through, the music is just top tier. It makes you want to continue exploring. It makes you want to stay in there. And Rocket Knight Adventures was exactly the same. Even though it was on the Sega Genesis, and the Sega Genesis wasn't known for having the best sound chip, what they did with this game in terms of the music and presenting a new feel and a new vibe for each level adds to the legendary, I guess, gameplay that we get from Rocket Knight Adventures. And that's one of the reasons why it's still hailed as a cult classic to this day. I mean, we just got a re-release of this game from Limited Run, and the soundtrack is also available. And this is just a top tier game. And if we're talking about music, obviously there's so many games that we could point to, but I would have to also point to the mother of the Metroidvania genre in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, arguably one of the, if not the best Metroidvania game of all time. And of course, we could look at Castlevania and point to the amazing voice acting in this game. Obviously, the gameplay is top tier. So many games have been, modeled after the gameplay that came out of this game. And even though it was on the PlayStation, which, launched the 3D era in gaming, they still opted to go with that 2D side-scrolling graphical art style for this game. And a lot of the gameplay experience, in my opinion, leaned on, again, an amazing musical soundtrack that comes with this game. The music at each level, the music at each step when you're going through different parts of the castle. I mean, it just creates a whole new experience, and you feel like you are in a whole new world within the game. And, I can't end this video out without pointing to one more game, which I think many might say that this game, not only in terms of the music in this game, but also the sound effects, that you experience in this game, probably makes this one of the best musically scored games of all time. And that is the father of the Metroidvania genre in Super Metroid. And Super Metroid, I mean, from start to finish, from the opening scene to the different sound effects, the sound of each blaster, the music, and the ominous, creepy, different sounds and music that comes with each level. It's very hard to compare anything to Metroid, especially from that generation. And I think this is also going to go down as one of the best soundtracks of all time. It really immersed you into the world of Samus and what she had to deal with, and in fighting Ridley, and being on planet Zeb, or Zeb, however you say it. Just so much of the music and so much of the sound effects is what creates this gameplay experience. And I think music cannot be understated or underrated when it comes to games of the past and even games of the present. Obviously we have much better technology. There's much more that we can do to, create great musical experiences within these video games. But, listening to the music on some of these older video games is kind of like listening to a record or listening to a vinyl. They just have different lows. The basses in them just sound different, especially in like Metroid. The bass, the reverb that you get from some of these soundtracks is just top tier. And I think, to me, music in video games can never be highlighted enough. So let me know what you think are some of the best video game soundtracks of all time. What are some of the most memorable musical experiences that you've had when playing video games? And I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.